Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Terumah, and with it, we begin the incredible journey into the Mishkan, a journey that will span the Parshas of Terumah and Tetzaveh, and then Vayakal Pekudei, where the Torah spares no detail. The fabrication of the Mishkan, the structure itself, the creation of the utensils, the Kohanic vestments, the Big Day Kahuna. But I want to draw your attention to the opening phrase, or the second pasuk of this week's parasha. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, remember, you can't build a Mishkan without a fundraiser. So we have to do the fundraiser. Dabrel b'nei Yisrael, this is Parashah Chafei pasuk base, chapter 25, verse 2. Hashem says to Moshe, speak to the Jewish people. Dabrel b'nei Yisrael, v'yikchu li truma, me'ez kol ish asher yidvenu libo. And Moshe, take a truma, take a gift offering, take charity, take the contribution from every person whose heart impels him to give. Tikhuas trumasi, shall you take the offering from them. Rashi HaKadosh, as many of the Mefarshim, are intrigued by this lashon of v'yikchu li truma. Makadosh Baruch Hu just said to Moshe, Dabrel b'nei Yisrael, v'yikchu truma. Moshe, go around and collect. It's a fundraiser. You got to collect the money from Klal Yisrael. Why do you have to say v'yikchu li, take for me? So Rashi HaKadosh says, li lishmi. That Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu something amazing. I don't just want the people to give without kavanah, without specific intent. I want them to give lishma. I want them to give because that act of connection, that act of giving, brings them closer to me. That act of giving is a fulfillment of adherence to the divine will. That act of giving is something so much higher. I don't want them to give because of peer pressure, social pressure, Moshe Rabbeinu knocking on their door. I want them to give with a complete heart. I want them to give because they want to give. I want them to give because they feel that that act of giving to the Mishkan is in and of itself a form of divine service. And that's why it says, V'yichuli Moshe, when you take it from them, when you collect it from them, it has to be li. It has to be for me, Hashem. It has to be lishma. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov asks a very interesting question. He says, I don't understand. Why does the act of tzedakah have to be lishma? So in other words, remember, it would appear that Hashem is kind of creating a paradigm here for how we give tzedakah. That apparently when it comes to tzedakah, it's not enough to give, but you have to give with the right intent. You have to give with the right kavanah. You have to give to make sure that you understand that it's a service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That it's not a burden to give, it's a privilege to give. It's not annoying to be asked, but it's the greatest privilege to be asked. Because if you could support, if you could help, that's a schus. Hashem wants us to do it lishma, with the right intentions, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a divine act of service. This is Rabbi Nachman. Why? In fact, the Rebbe posits something amazing. The Rebbe says, I think actually tzedakah is probably the one mitzvah that dafka does not require any kavanah on the part of the giver. Why not? And listen to the words of the Rebbe. He says, Shinesin hasatzedakah ole yafa afilu kishein nos l'shem shamayim. Because the act of giving tzedakah is meaningful even if you don't have intent for the service of God. Why not? Ki terem hakol nizon ha'ani o mechaya es nafsho b'tzedakah. Because whether you give with intent or not, with kavanah or not, for a higher purpose or not, at the end of the day, you're doing something good, right? The Rebbe illustrates this with an act of giving to a poor person. If I give money to a poor person, so whether, again, I have all the most beautiful kavanas in the world or have absolutely no kavanas, right? Whether I have intentions, no intentions, whether I do it because I want to do it or because I'm forced to do it or compelled to do it or social pressure to do it, the Rebbe says, who cares? At the end of the day, your act did something positive. There was a poor person, now the poor person has money. And by the way, it's not just for the poor person. You can extend the logic of Rabbi Nachman to everything. When you give tzedakah, by definition, you have affected change with your generosity. So, right, whether you're helping the ani, you're helping a yeshiva, you're helping a shul, you're helping an organization, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you have kavanah, specific intent, higher intent, holy intent, or not, the act in and of itself, by definition, is constructive, helpful, and meaningful. So the Rebbe goes on, he says something amazing. He says, therefore, I think the pasuk is coming to teach us something different. So you understand that every pasuk in the Torah has its stated meaning, and then, of course, there's a pnimius, there's a deeper meaning. So the Rebbe says, over here, Hashem is teaching us an additional lesson by tzedakah. The Rebbe says, listen to this. He says, v'yikchu li truma li lishmi. Moshe, take it for me. Take it, right? I want you to take it for my sake. The Rebbe posits is not talking to the giver, rather it's talking to the recipient. See, the giver doesn't need kavanah. Whether he has kavanah, doesn't have kavanah, his act stands alone as a profound act of generosity that is going to affect good in this world. But who does need kavanah? The recipient needs kavanah. The recipient, the person who receives the tzedakah, requires kavanah l'shma, for the sake of Hashem. What does that mean? And the Rebbe says very interestingly, the Rebbe says that ultimately, again, Sheira Makabal Atzdaka Lekabal Shev Shemaim Shelo Lekabal Atzdaka Letzorach Mosaros Chas V'Shalom. That if a person accepts tzedakah, a person should never accept tzedakah for the sake of funding a luxurious lifestyle. In other words, the Rebbe goes on and says, you're allowed to take tzedakah, and you have to take tzedakah if you don't have what you need in order to meet your needs, your basic needs in life. But if you're taking tzedakah because you want luxuries, you're taking tzedakah because you want excess, that you're not allowed to do. And the Rebbe posits, that's the pshat, the yikhuli. If you're going to take tzedakah, then it has to be lishma. It has to be for the right purposes. So amazingly enough, as much as everyone understands the yikhuli is talking about the giver, Rabbi Nachman says, no, there's no din of lishma, there's no obligation of specific holy intent by the giver. Because even if the giver doesn't give with intent, his act is still cathartic, his act is still holy, his act still affects change. But who does have to have kavanah? Who does have to have specific intent? The recipient. The yikhu, if you're going to take, it's got to be li. It's got to be the shema. It's got to be for the sake of a mitzvah. It has to be because you actually need it, and not because I'm trying to go ahead and indulge some additional appetite for excess. If you need it, absolutely unequivocally take it, and it's a mitzvah to do so. But if you don't need it, you can't take it. It's got to be, the act of taking has to be lishma. A beautiful idea, but perhaps we could also understand the words of Rabbi Nachman a little bit differently. I want to draw your attention for a moment to Megillas Esther. And because it's Chodesh Adar already, so we have to begin to get ready for the Yom Tov. There's an incredible episode in Megillas Esther after Mordechai sends word to Esther about the decree of Haman. And Esther hears what is about to happen to her people. And her maidservants come in, they tell her everything that's happening. And the Megillah says as follows, this is in Parak Daled, Pasuk Daled. Vatischalcha hamalka ma'od. Esther was like shaking to her core. Vatishlach begadim lahalbish es Mordechai lahastir sakom me'alav lo kibel. And what did she do? She sent a change of clothing to Mordechai, but Mordechai wouldn't accept it. Right? Because remember again, beforehand, Mordechai heard already before what Haman was going to do, and Mordechai donned sackcloth. He was sitting sackcloth, he tore his clothing, he was mourning, he was crying, he was davening. So Esther hears the news, she's shaking to her core, and the first thing she does is send a change of clothing to Mordechai that he should change out of his sackcloth. And the Tiferes Shlomo, the great Heilige Tzaddik Shlomo Rodamsk, asks a very simple question. He says, I don't understand. My haisa kavanasa b'shiloach habegadim elav acha sherasa v'shama maras nafsho. Why did Esther send a change of clothing to Mordechai? We understand why Mordechai was wearing sackcloth. Sackcloth is symbolic of mourning. I understand. Mordechai was sabrachan. He was broken. He just heard about the decree to annihilate his people. So Esther, why exactly are you sending him a change of clothing? And listen to the words of the Tiferes Shlomo. The Rebbe writes, he says, because Esther, kishashama kol hara'ash shal Mordechai bebechi v'zaka atzaras Yisrael. Ultimately, when Esther hears that Mordechai is crying and screaming for the plight, for the impending destruction of Klal Yisrael, what happens? She sent him clothing, lahasir sakom me'alav, telling him, you got to take off your sackcloth. Perish, lahasir ha'atzvos v'hayagon me'alav. Mordechai, you can't be sad. You can't be sad. The sackcloth represents profound, personalistic sadness. You got to remove your sackcloth. Rather, why? Rak besimcha lehiskarev or lehispala lifnei Hashem yisbarach. Because at the end of the day, Mordechai, there is only one way to deal with challenge, and that is besimcha. Why? Because it says, Ki ein lavo ela melech bilavush sak. An incredible play on words. You can't come before the king in sackcloth. The king representing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you want to affect change with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way to do it is not with sackcloth. The way to do it is with beautiful, proper clothing. Besimcha. Now, dear friends, simcha doesn't necessarily mean a big smile on your face and clicking your heels. Simcha means a sense of hope, a sense of optimism. That Esther was saying to Mordechai, when a Yid faces crisis, we do not crumble. When a Jew faces overwhelming circumstances, I don't curl up in the fetal position and rock back and forth in the corner. That's not what we do. We don't put on the sackcloth and pretend, or not pretend, or make it look like the sky is falling, even if it feels like the sky is falling. The Yid understands that the way to go ahead and deal with any crisis in life is besimcha. Not besimcha al gamzula tova. That's true also. But besimcha with a sense of optimism, a sense of hope, a sense of belief. I got this. We got this. No matter what it is, we will figure it out. What's the plan? I don't know what the plan is. How are you going to resolve it? I have absolutely no idea. But here's what I do know. That if I take the sackcloth approach, and I just am all broken, all mournful, all sorrowful, all dark, all depressed, nothing gets done. So Esther, amazingly enough, after she is shaken to her core about the impending destruction of her people, gathers herself together, sends Mordechai a change letter, Mordechai, get it together. We're not sackcloth Jews. That's not what we do. That's not how we deal with it. Put on beautiful clothing, come before the king, gird yourself with a sense of hopeful, optimistic simcha, and let's go. Incredible and overwhelming. And perhaps that's what Rabbi Nachman is saying over here as well. What does it mean that the ani, that the poor person, has to accept tzedakah lishma? So the Rebbe says what it means is only take what you need. If you're taking, you can't take for excess, but perhaps taking tzedakah lishma means something else. If anyone's ever been on the side of the recipient, it's a very unpleasant place to be. And it's not just with money. Not just with money. Anytime you're in a difficult situation and you need other people to help you, for most of us, that is a very uncomfortable feeling. Because if I need someone else, that generally means that I'm deficient in some way. There's something that's lacking from me, whether it's actual money or whether it's other emotional or intellectual resources that I don't have. I need someone else. And that feeling of needing someone else and not feeling whole could often be incredibly difficult. Perhaps what Rabbi Nachman could also be teaching us is v'yikchuli, when you have to receive from someone else, when you need help because you just don't have it together, when you need help because things are just not going the way that you need them to go, v'yikchu, if you're going to take, li, let it be l'shma. And perhaps the Shema means, for the sake of Hashem, means with an incredible and overwhelming sense of optimism and of hope. If you find yourself in a kicha, if you find yourself in a situation in life where you can't right now solve your problems, some circumstances that you're encountering are just so incredibly overwhelming, and I don't even know what to do, and I'm going to need help, whether it's financial, emotional, whatever it might be. It is so easy in those moments to put on your sackcloth, to just cry, to just mourn, to just say, woe is me. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, Moshe, daber el b'nei Yisrael, v'yikchu, tell Klal Yisrael that when they are in a matzav of need, when they are in a matzav of a situation of difficulty, remind them, li, put on your clothing, get rid of the sackcloth, reject the sackcloth, gird yourself, clothe yourself, lishma, with intention for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with beautiful holy intentions, with a sense of optimism and hope. When you encounter crisis, there's only one way forward, and that is the path of hope. That is the path of optimism. I don't mean false hope and false optimism, because that could be delusional, but a real feeling that some way, somehow, things are going to come together. How? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how, but I believe it. I have to believe it, because if I don't believe it, the only other alternative is to put on my sackcloth and to literally again just fall into a pile of depression, sadness, and despair. So those are the options. Life comes down to one of two wardrobe choices. You can wear sackcloth or you can wear clothing. That's what Esther Malka told Mordechai. It's what she whispers in her ear as well. It's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu. There are times in life when we're really in need. There are times in life that are really overwhelmingly difficult. There are times in life that are incredibly challenging. How do you approach those circumstances? Lishmi. With HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with holy intention, with kavanah. But what kind of kavanah? The kavanah of optimism, the kavanah of hope, the kavanah that says, I got this. Some way, somehow, I'm going to power through. Some way, somehow, I'm going to make it to the other end of this difficulty, of these trials and tribulations. Some way, somehow, I'll get to a place of simcha again. Mordechai took Esther's advice, took off his sackcloth, ultimately, later on, not immediately, right? In the beginning, it says, velo kibel, he wouldn't accept it. But later on, he accepts the clothing. May we have the courage, in those difficult circumstances, to reject the sackcloth, put on the beautiful garments of hope and optimism, and find a way through even the most acute of life challenges. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.